Welcome. We're going to look at the article, What We Learned from the 2010 Census. It's interesting because it's in past tense, but it actually came out in 2009, this article. I've looked to find something a little bit better, more updated, but this seems to be the one that we're going to go with. So, because it's fun, I've done some fun things with it. So, let's go ahead, advance the next slide. They come up with what 6 disruptive trends, and here they are. The South has risen again. The browning of America, marrying out, is in. The silver tsunami is about to hit. The end of men, and cooling water from grandma's well and grandpa's too. All right, so the South has risen again. And what you look at is during the time 2000, 2009, United States population grew 24 million people. Most of that growth happened in the South, 51%. Both the South and West have grown quite a bit more than the rest of the United States, the Northeast and the Midwest. But the growth happens out here in the West, but also in the South. So what are the implications of this? We have this idea right here. This is an article from USA Today. This couple has visited all but one Cracker Barrel. There's a little video that goes with it. I'm not going to click on it, but I think it's interesting. Cracker Barrel is kind of an institution in the South, and maybe it's expanding beyond the southern states and up to the northern states. And so that might be part of the implication that's going on. Other things, food is very cultural, it's very regional. Sweet tea is something. Waffles and chicken. Other traditional southern state dishes here. The Waffle House, another restaurant, and the Cracker Barrel, as we talked about. So the idea behind that was maybe the South is going to have an increase in influence on what goes on in the United States. But then we look at trend 2, the browning of America, and we look at the different ethnicities in terms of how quickly they've grown during that period. And you look at this statistic here in particular, of the 24 million, again, 12 million of it are Hispanic. So that's a big increase in the Hispanic population. And a lot of that comes in Texas and Arizona and the South, the so-called South. And so maybe the South has risen again may just mean that the rise of Hispanics in the U.S., which may be what's going on when we talk about that sort of thing. Looking to the future, they project out to 2050. African Americans are still roughly 13%. The trend line shows they're going to stay about 13%, but Hispanic population has more than doubled, and the Asian population has almost doubled by then. And I think they chose 2050 to show that the white population is less than half, no longer the majority by 2050 in the United States. We already make adjustment to speak to different ethnicities. This is a web page that's put together by Procter & Gamble called My Black is Beautiful. It's pretty solid. What they want you to do is join up other women of color and share your cosmetic experiences, and also share how wonderful the cosmetics that you get from Procter & Gamble are. If you believe women of color have different makeup, hair care needs, then it makes a lot of sense to run this type of a segmentation of your market. This one here is a fun ad, and it's looking at the Hispanic market. I'm going to actually put the ad in. So that you can click on it when you get there in the presentation. But this is called La Mala Suerte, which is the Hispanic version of Mayhem. If you're familiar with the Mayhem ad campaign in English, it's pretty funny, and I think you'll enjoy it. One thing to look at is this guy who's our Mayhem guy, the La Mala Suerte guy. He speaks with a Spanish Barcelona type accent, which of course adds a little bit of sinisterness to his to whatever he has going on. So that, I think that's kind of interesting when you look at that. But if you look at the rise of Hispanics in the U.S., you need to look at them as a market and potentially manage your marketing mix to cater to them a little bit more. One strategy is you just take the English language campaign and translate it into Spanish and see how it goes. That's not necessarily going to be the best for all. A lot of times you're going to want to put in the cultural icons that are specific to regional areas, that are specific to different Spanish groups, and that's probably more effective, but it's a little bit harder to do. Marrying out is in, the rise of the interracial family. So this is a statistic, and again showing the numbers going up. I have an ad here, which is a Cheerios ad, which again I'll link to. It's really good. I think you'll enjoy it. Suppose So we see this nice interracial family. It's really, I think one of the cutest ads out there. But if you look it up, it's entitled "Controversial Cheerios Commercial." I don't know how controversial it is, but it is in response to these statistics here and the changing family structure. And as families make decisions as a unit in terms of their consumer behavior, it's important to keep up with the changing family structure. This is one by Honeygrams. It's also a good ad and shows different versions of families. We have the gay couple here. We have the dad that's all tatted up. And then you're going to see an interracial couple that comes up as well right here. Anyway, I'll link to that ad and let you go ahead and watch the whole version if you choose to. So again, there's some statistics. You can see in 1980 all the way up to 2010, newlyweds, 14.6%, currently married 8%. And then you can see where, and again, one statistic I just point out is here, if you're in the United States and you're going to marry somebody of a different race or ethnicity, you're likely to be Asian more than any of the others in these categories. And across the board, because white is the largest group still, it's Hispanics with a white person, is Asians with a white persons, etc. Only 11% are both non-white. But again, the trends in terms of the family structure. The silver tsunami is about to hit. Again, this was way back in 2009, 10 years ago, so we've really picked up there. You look at the numbers, and you're seeing a big increase in the United States and globally of the over 65 group. This is the group that we expect to continue to grow very well. We have here, this is the last remnants of the Generation X in the 25 to 44. You can see how much smaller that is. But you're going to see the millennials are going to be huge. The boomers are starting to retire, get into the 65 plus group, and that's going to be the increase. So I put together an ad, not put together, I found an ad of a product that was related to, changing health conditions. Again, I'll let you click on the ad and watch it, but it's about adult diapers, essentially. And that's an issue that you don't have generally when you're younger. But as the population ages, you're failing, your eyes start to fail, your hearing starts to fail, all those things that you used to count on, not as strong. And one of them may be your ability to be continent. You're incontinent. All right. Again, statistics 10 years ago, you can see the different age groups and how they're going like that. This is a section titled "The End of Man" with a question mark. And it's the beginning of the Great Recession. And we see the jobs were lost in what we would traditionally call male-dominated fields in construction and manufacturing. But jobs in healthcare and government, they've continued to hold strong. The other issue that's real interesting is that the number of women versus men that are pursuing higher education degrees are much higher. So even though currently there are more men with a four-year degree than women, that's likely to change going forward as we see just about in every category you're going to have more women pursuing higher ed degrees than are men. So that's an interesting statistic as well. The Great Recession, well, this is a statistic of women in the workforce, and you can see that 2010, close to 50% of the workforce were women. And that's the expectation today, that both men and women work in the workforce. But historically, men have been the primary breadwinner when it comes to family and family structure. But with the recession and the men losing the jobs, women with better education, when it came to opportunities to get new job, it was the women that went back to work. And we had more of the house husbands that came along, which I think is kind of interesting. So you're just seeing the change in statistics of women that are becoming the primary breadwinners for families, and that continued to go up during that Great Recession. This is an interesting one. It's interesting because, again, it's about family, and the numbers are pretty small, but the changes are fairly dramatic in terms of percent. It's just the number of kids that are no longer living with their parents, but are living with their grandparents under some condition. So I think that's kind of an interesting change in our population, is that we can go to grandma's house and live with her, and also perhaps look at this Generation X and even the millennials that have not taken care of their parental duties and have had their parents step up, and it's grandma that's taking care of the kids. All right, so this is a link to where the article came from. At least it used to be. I don't think that link works anymore. So I was trying to come up with some stuff that's a little bit new, and I have a link to an article that came out just this year, a couple months ago, and it's kind of what we expect that the U.S. Census will tell us in 2020. So I have this here is a link to the article itself, and there's lots of pretty graphs, but it's a PDF, so I wasn't able to cut them in and show you. So we're just going to look at these sorts of things here. U.S. population is still growing, and it's growing very well for a westernized economy, mostly because we have a nice immigration rate, and in terms of our population growth rate, we have more kids than a lot of other westernized economies have. And so we are growing as a population, but our percentage increase in growth is decreasing every year. We're growing, but we're growing a little bit less quickly every year. A lot more households are having a hard time growing up and taking that traditional look, which means that they're not buying homes, that a lot of young people are living with their parents. When it comes to millennials, it is the number one way for them to actually live. They've moved home with their parents. That's the number one household experience millennials have. Again, the South and West is where the growth is coming from. You look at Texas, it's getting some more electoral votes, and some other other cities are as well. Not cities, but states, sorry. A lot of the U.S. hinterland is emptying out. You look at Oregon, for example, and you look at the counties on the eastern part of Oregon and also on the southern part of Oregon. They're losing population as more and more people go to where the jobs are in the population centers. And in Oregon, that's Eugene and Salem and Portland and places like that. Puerto Rico is particularly hard hit in terms of their population emptying off of the island. Getting older, that trend has continued from the 6 trends that we looked at. That it's going to really change how we market in the United States. Children are part of the more ethnic group, more ethnic than their parents. They're used to that in school, and their peer group is much more ethnically diverse. There are still some issues in terms of where that population is growing. And home ownership, because of wealth gaps between whites and blacks, there is also home ownership gaps that continues to be a part of the landscape of the United States. So I hustled through that last part a little bit quicker than I wanted to, but I wanted to get done under a 15-minute time limit. So here we go, and that's our presentation. Thanks for listening.